Hey review family, keep it tight. My name is Jay Morse, the review guy reviewing music for the love of music, and I'm back again to bring you another video. And in this one I'm going to be covering the new Old Man Gloom record entitled Semiar VIII, Light of Meaning. This is the 9th studio-length album by the American extreme metal band Old Man Gloom. This release is available now on Profound Lore Records, where the band has found themselves for a hot minute. This is an all-star ensemble. I can't stress that enough. And I am kicking myself a bit for not covering the record that dropped a little bit earlier in the year. I believe it dropped in March, but just know that a lot of the things that I think about this current record is a lot of what I feel about that record. So consider this somewhat of a joint review, as the two sort of go hand in hand for the most part musically. Generally, they have been carrying on the Semiar records that they have had since their formation, although I'm not sure if they count the records that are not called Semiar in the series, considering they have jumped Roman numerals to sort of coincide with other releases that weren't named Semiar. It's a little bit complicated. There are a lot of branches to this discography, so I'm not going to really stress that much about it. Aaron Turner, involved with bands like Sumac, and specifically ISIS. Nate Newton of Converge and Stephen Brodsky of Cave In all helped to fill out this lineup of some very odd sounds that kind of come together. It really is a strange combination to come into one. On one hand, the inclusion of Aaron Turner makes a lot of these tracks take on a sludge metal, a doom metal, a post-metal sort of aesthetic. These tracks drip with atmosphere in many passages that are unmistakably post-metal and doom metal inspired. These two minds, from the opposite sides of the musical spectrum, flex their musical talents in such a way that they combine what seems like an extremely unlikely pair of guitarists and make it something that seems so scary that they can stick the landing so cleanly. These heavily distorted and despondent passages of just frantic instrumentation, but then they'll slide into more groovy rock and roll centric sections that masterfully capture the sort of constant, rippling, bobbing effect. Wrath of the Weary is absolutely packed. It is so noisy, with some of these background bits that are tossed in the backdrop really just feeling like heavy machinery that is contrasting with the very lively front line of the track. And that is a common trend here. In many ways, the general backbone of this record happens to be the background embellishments that they toss in to make these mixes feel a lot more layered, have a lot more to them, have a lot more spice and flavor as opposed to just a blunt delivery, which surprisingly causes the execution of these tracks to not only be a little bit more digestible, but come off much more experimental than what you're necessarily used to from the projects that these people are a part of. Simply put, they just take a lot of risks here that you wouldn't necessarily expect from bands like Cave In, like Converge, like ISIS. Surely those bands are adventurous, but they're adventurous in their own lane. They're adventurous in their own genres. This is such a massive scope. It's the big picture. Simply because their styles don't coincide nearly as much as they do here. And that's no fault of their own. If they included some of the things that were here in their own projects, that would have just come off as weird. It would have come off the beaten path. It wouldn't have fit the general style that they usually play in. This is like a three-way clash of three completely separate musical ideologies, specifically sludge metal, heavy metalcore music, and alternative rock and metal. It's like various mountainscapes coming together, clashing together, pounding together to create a mega peak that pierces the clouds in the way that these polar opposites can so properly merge their sounds together to make it an anomaly, an oddity, but still digestible in the way that it is so experimental, but just a deadly combination. On True Volcano, these intro bits of heavy glitch is something that you wouldn't expect from these projects, and it carries on throughout the track. Not to mention these rambling backup vocals that carry on in this track with this strange, heavy, distorted effect thrown on them that makes them come off super sharp. They have a sting to them. They are ultimately shrill. I suppose this sounds most like Cave In, but even that's a stretch. See, usually the thing that I have noticed is when there's a supergroup or when there's a duo that comes from other bands, usually one influence happens to bleed through a lot more than the others, usually instrumentally, to where you can find a lot more common ground and a lot more influence coming from that project as opposed to the other, and the other's influence can feel a lot more subtle and buried beneath the surface to create a little bit more dynamics. But diversity is not an issue here because it's handled entirely differently. It's a strange, unfamiliar listen that is hard to compare to anything and hard to put a finger on. So much noise and distortion are peppered throughout this record. The intro of Final Defeat is another. It has this introduction that is so loud, so intrusive. It is ear-splitting, and it feels like a dial being turned up slowly. The slow fade-in of what's to come makes my skin crawl. It's tense and it keeps swelling. It keeps swelling. It keeps swelling up like a boil that's ready to be popped. And trust me, Old Man Gloom, they're gonna be the ones that has the ability to lance that boil. This track takes so long to start, but when it starts, it goes full throttle. It kicks into high gear. And when it does start, it turns into one of the most cinematic, theatrically sound sludge metal, doom metal tracks that I've heard this year. The instrumentation alone, dear lord, it feels like an expansive cave and your torch is starting to burn out. This mix on this track is so layered and it's so cacophonous. By far the most chaotic track on the whole record. By far the thickest track on this record. It just takes so much out of you, and combine that with the way the track starts and it just is so well executed. It's so crisp sounding. The mix work is fantastic. These hanging background vocal embellishments that hang around vocals that are already layered, like they didn't need to add that in. They didn't need to make it that more diverse, but they did. They chose to. And it's those little things that they add in that really show how much passion went into this project. The equalization and the compression on every little moment goes to show how much thought they put into the tempo switches. Everything is so greatly toned and gratifying. I implore anyone to check this record out if you enjoy any of the projects that these people are involved in. It is such a great combination of sounds, one of the weirdest records of the year, even though in many ways it can feel in your face and blunt. There is so much more beneath the surface that I think is worthy of being examined, worthy of being appreciated, and I do suggest this to anyone that is a fan of sludge metal, doom metal, death metal, metalcore, alternative music. There's a lot, noise. Otherwise, I'm enjoying this record quite a lot. I'm going to be giving it an 8 out of 10. And that is a wrap. Have you heard this new Old Man Gloom record, Semiar VIII, Light of Meaning? If you have, let me know in the comment section below what you thought about it. I would love to discuss a record with you. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is, my name is James, the Review Guy, and I'm signing off soon. Maybe we could both explore this star is running.